Welcome to the year 2051, but in Madden 23, presented by the EA Creator Network. A big thank you to the EA Creator Network for giving me early access to Madden 23 so I can drop videos like this for you guys. Something to keep in mind though as you're watching this gameplay is that this is a work in progress game. We got it early, which means it's a work in progress. You might see some bugs or glitches or things that aren't really representational of what the final version of the game will be. It's just a work in progress. What you're seeing is the year 2051. We have simmed 30 years, technically 29, but 30 sounds better. 30 years into the future to see what Madden's franchise mode ultimately looks like. Now we're gonna go through things like records and who's won the Super Bowls and MVPs and all those different awards, as well as who has just sort of shattered things across the board. But I want to see some of the highest rated players. So the highest rated players in the league, there's a bunch of 99s. We got Cavante Conway, Jamichael Young, Shaq Smith. We got middle linebackers, halfbacks, and Kevin Beverly. There's actually only there's not that many 99 overall, so that feels pretty good. From a quarterback perspective, there's actually not a single 99 overall. There's a lot of really good, highly rated quarterbacks, but I'm kind of happy to see it's not just overloaded. In the halfback, as you saw with Kevin Beverly, he's the only 99 overall there. You got another guy in San Francisco, 97, who's also paired with a 99 overall receiver. I'm pretty sure, Cavante Conway was a 99 overall receiver. So they have a great running back and a great wide receiver there. Over on defense, the highest rated corner is going to be Evan Davis. You've got Quinn Cousins over there with a 95 overall at 31. You got a 30-year-old that's a 93 overall. At free safety, you've got a 90. You got a couple 91 overalls here. And then we go to strong safety. You also have a 98 as your highest with a 96 and 90. Honestly, these overalls feel pretty good. Let's see what single game records that people have shattered though. We see Joe Burrow actually broke the single game passing yards record with 592, nearly getting to 600. You're also going to see Welch get up there. Griffith, a couple of guys actually got in this board crossing the 500-yard threshold. On the passing touchdown mark, literally something I would not have expected. Ryan Tannehill threw 8 in a game with Derrick Henry as his running back. In what world did this happen? Tannehill, go off. I see you. We move over to rushing yards. This is actually interesting. Not a single running back actually beat Adrian Peterson's mark of 296. And if you go through here, there's not a single running back that actually made a mark here at all. Nobody made a dent. From a rushing touchdown perspective, we're seeing Joe Mixon tie the record with 6 in 2028. And then we see James Robinson in 2024 get 5, but really no one else. On the receiving yards perspective, I'm actually kind of surprised by this considering how good some of these prospects are, but we're not seeing anybody really eclipse 336 yards. And as we sort of mosey our way through, nobody made an entry here. Receiving touchdowns is a different book here, though. We see 6 receiving touchdowns by Charlton of the Falcons. The dude obviously just broke the record by 1 touchdown here. And as we go through, we see Woodward go with 5 in 2041, and then a bunch of other guys chime in with 5, basically tying that. Brandon Marshall's catch record appears to be safe. No one really makes an entry here. In the top part of it, we do see a couple of guys, Sanchez and Quinn. And then as we see Oakley as well in 2025. Defensive sacks seems to be safe as well. Don't really see any entries here. Defensive interceptions also seem safe. I guess all those pass yards. I mean, we saw some cornerbacks at pretty good overalls, but nobody that was crazy popping out in the later part. So maybe that's why. Up next, we're going to go ahead and look at 2022 to 2032 to see how the teams ultimately did. So the Titans actually win the Super Bowl in 2022. They end up beating the 49ers. Would not have expected this, but hey, Trey Lance pop off. Tom Brady's your MVP. Christian McCaffrey's Offensive Player of the Year. Aaron Donald, Defensive Player of the Year. Not really shocked by that. Desmond Ridder is your Offensive Rookie of the Year. We see Louis Cine is going to be your Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then we see Derrick Henry get the Super Bowl MVP. Good for the Titans for going over there and doing that finally. In 2023, the 49ers actually beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl with Fred Warner being your MVP of the Super Bowl. Josh Allen's the MVP of the league. Allen Robinson is Offensive Player of the Year. Wouldn't really expect that, but hey, good for him. Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. Earl Curry, keep that name in mind. This dude's going to pop off a little bit. The Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then Gage Clayton gets Defensive Rookie of the Year. We go to 2024, the Washington Commanders lose to the Buffalo Bills, circling the wagon as Josh Allen gets your Super Bowl MVP. Lamar Jackson gets his 2nd MVP of the league. Zeke Elliott, Offensive Player of the Year. Aaron Donald repeats as Defensive Player of the Year. Sam Freeman, and then Kevin Ballard for Rookies of the Year. In 2025, you see the Bengals actually get over the hump and win the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow obviously being the MVP. Dak Prescott is the league MVP. McCaffrey comes back as the Offensive Player of the Year, as does Myles Garrett. We go to 2026. We're seeing the 49ers beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Things I did not expect at all. Fred Warner repeats the Super Bowl MVP. Lamar comes back for his 3rd MVP of the actual league. We see Calvin Ridley get Offensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett again is Defensive Player of the Year. We go to 2027. We see the Commanders come back to the Super Bowl. This time they actually win, and they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, with Chase Young being the MVP. A new MVP from one of the generated guys, Mike Fisher, for the Seahawks. We're going to see Calvin Ridley come back as the Offensive Player of the Year. Caleb Spriggs on defense. We go to 2028. The Minnesota Vikings are going to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs here, 38-30, with Patrick Mahomes getting his revenge and being the Super Bowl MVP. Earl Curry, who we just talked about as Offensive Player of the Year a few years ago, is now the league MVP. Christian McCaffrey comes in as Offensive Player of the Year, and Chase Young gets Defensive Player of the Year. In 2029, the Falcons don't lose 28-3. They actually win 21-13 here, with Earl Curry being the MVP again. This guy seems like he's a pretty generational prospect. Dak Prescott gets the league MVP. Rondale Moore is Offensive Player of the Year, and Josh Allen on defense gets your Defensive Player of the Year. In 2030, the Jets end up beating the Falcons. Zach Wilson, every mom's favorite son, gets the MVP of the Super Bowl. Earl Curry repeats as the NFL MVP here. We see Chase Young come in as the Defensive Player of the Year, and Sheldon Moore on the offense. 2031, the Bills come back as Super Bowl champions, but a different quarterback this time. Josh Allen, no longer the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, but they still get the job done, winning by 3. Adam Spitzer comes in as the MVP for the Commanders. You see Cole Demps, Caleb Spriggs, who was Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago, now comes in with that as well. And then in 2032, the Vikings beat the Patriots. I believe we had this matchup a few ago, with Jimmy Cumberland being the MVP for the Vikings, Earl Curry coming back as MVP of the league. We see Sean Bradford as Offensive Player of the Year, and Daniel Hayden on defense. Now let's check out some seasonal records. Now, Trevor Lawrence's rookie year wasn't exactly great, and there was a lot of criticism there, but look at what he did out here for the Dallas Cowboys. So Trevor Lawrence apparently went from Jacksonville to Dallas, goes for 6,083 passing yards, the first quarterback to ever eclipse that mark. And he did it in 2032, so he's in double-digit years of his career at this point and absolutely killed it. We see this guy, Art Harper, for the Cardinals, go for nearly 6K. Graham do it nearly. I mean, look at how many guys are up here. There's not a single person that was before this simulation that hit this pass yards mark. So passing definitely became even crazier in the future. On the passing touchdown mark, Spitzer, who we saw win a Super Bowl with the Commanders, ends up getting the most passing touchdowns in a season with 56, eclipsing what Peyton Manning had. He also gets tied here by Jay Murphy. But again, entry after entry. I mean, the only real player that sort of stayed on here after all this time was Peyton Manning. From a rushing perspective, Derrick Henry, who won a Super Bowl in 2022, we see him in 2025 come out with 2,202 yards rushing, the most ever in a single season, beating what Eric Dickerson had. As we come down here, though, the only other entry is Christian McCaffrey getting 1971 in 2026. From a rushing touchdown perspective, D. Harris for the Patriots gets 29 in 2026. We come down here, we see Pryor get 26 in 2046. We see Nick Chubb get 25. We also see Joe Mixon get 25. And Jay Pryor is back on the board again with 25 here in the 2044. From a receiving yards perspective, we see D. Brooks go for 2,290, beating out so many people. But look at all the guys that are below him that actually beat the previous record holders. We see M. Sanchez at 2197. Calvin Ridley goes for 2034, and then he goes for 2020 in the following season. We see M. Sanchez again with 2,014 yards. We see Allen Robinson again 1978, which might have been his Offensive Player of the Year or MVP season. And then we see Calvin Johnson's record in 1964 previously. It's crazy to see all these guys up here, but honestly, I'm not surprised considering how many passing yard records were already broken. From a receiving touchdown perspective, it appears Calvin really became one of the greatest receivers of all time. Goes for 25 in the year 2027. Charlton also tied that record in 2038. Randy Moss obviously holding it previously at 23, but Kramer tied it for the Jets. Demps tied it as well. We see Brooks tie it. I mean, so many guys are putting up big numbers out here. And Calvin Ridley's on here twice with 22 and then 25 before. The catch record ultimately ends up safe. No one beats what Michael Thomas had, but we do see Sanchez come in here with 143 as well as Ward. We also see 142 from Allen Robinson, 140 from Sanchez, and a couple of their entries here at the bottom. Defensive sacks, Myles Garrett literally became a superhuman in 2025. 30 sacks for him. Chase Young actually had 29 in 2030. Chase Young also did 26 in 2028. Aaron Donald had 25 in 2022. I mean, so many of these guys were putting up massive numbers. While interceptions may not have been going crazy, defensive sacks definitely were. And speaking of interceptions, yeah, again, no one really makes a single entry here. The quarterbacks were out here dicing up every single defense, and nobody could catch a pick. Picking up here in 2033, we'll go to about 2042. We see the Ravens beat the Vikings. The Vikings are making, honestly, pretty good runs here to the Super Bowl, just not always winning it. Lamar Jackson getting his MVP in the Super Bowl. We see Trevor Lawrence for the Cowboys now getting his MVP of the actual league. Sean Bradford comes back as Offensive Player of the Year. Chase Young back for Defensive Player of the Year. In 2034, the Rams get blown out by the Bengals. It is an absolute just thrashing at this point, 31-10. Spitzer comes back as the league MVP. Del Brooks is Offensive Player of the Year. Tony Sanders, his first Defensive Player of the Year. A defensive tackle winning the Defensive Player of the Year is kind of weird, but hey, good for him. The Patriots end up beating the Buccaneers 28-26 here in 2035. Mac Jones, still with the Patriots, gets the Super Bowl MVP. Your league MVP goes to Lamar Jackson. Manny Sanchez, who we saw a lot in those record books, gets Offensive Player of the Year, and Spriggs comes back as Defensive Player of the Year. He seems to be an incredible player as well. In 2036, the Browns lose to the Seahawks here, with Nick Brown from the Seahawks getting the MVP. Justin Simpson of the Bills, who had won a Super Bowl MVP a couple of years ago, is now your league MVP. Manny Sanchez repeats as your Offensive Player of the Year, with Cole Peterson coming in here as Defensive Player of the Year. In 2037, the Broncos, country, let's ride, end up beating the Cardinals. Ronnie Harper, the quarterback for the Broncos, ends up winning the Super Bowl MVP. Earl Curry back with yet another league MVP at this point with Manny Sanchez. I believe that's a 3-time winner in a row that Manny Sanchez got Offensive Player of the Year. The dude's literally insane. And then Quentin Tucker for the Raiders on defense. In 2038, the Colts end up beating the Eagles. Felix Proctor from the Colts gets the Super Bowl MVP. Trey Lance for the Falcons now, so Earl Curry apparently gone from there. Trey Lance gets the league MVP. Del Brooks is Offensive Player of the Year again, and Paul Tolliver gets Defensive Player of the Year. 2039, the Dolphins finally get that Super Bowl, and it was the Lions they beat, so the Lions fans were literally in shambles. Eduardo Aguirre is going to get the Super Bowl MVP. David Cannon and the Chargers, the first-time league MVP, with Connor White on Offensive Player of the Year and Eduardo Aguirre getting Defensive Player of the Year. So Defensive Player of the Year and Super Bowl MVP. The Dolphins got a real one out there. In 2040, we're going to see the Raiders end up beating the Giants. It's going to be Joe Jacobs being the Super Bowl MVP, with Brett Graham for the Cardinals being your league MVP. Sean Bradford back at Offensive Player of the Year. Elton Coleman, the second defensive tackle we've seen win Defensive Player of the Year. In 2041, we end up seeing the Seahawks beat the Jaguars. Sean Bradford, who's been crushing it in Offensive Player of the Year, wins the Super Bowl MVP. Trevor Wayne for the 49ers is the league MVP, with Sean Bradford again back as the Offensive Player of the Year. And then Greg Bullough is going to be your Defensive Player of the Year. We go to 2042 now. We're going to see the Seahawks again in that Super Bowl conversation win. They beat the Browns. Brendan Trent is going to be the Super Bowl MVP, with Zach Callaway winning the league MVP. We see Josh McDaniels still coaching the Raiders, which is crazy. Good news for the Raiders fans. Wins Coach of the Year. Terrell Kelly gets Offensive Player of the Year, and Elton Coleman wins Defensive Player of the Year. Let's go check out the career records now. Now, I don't think anyone's shocked that Tom Brady ends up being at the top of the passing yards thing, but this dude went for 108,931 passing yards. If you do the math, this dude has about 84,000 passing yards present day. That means that he went for, what is that, 24,000 after, which means he probably played until he's 50, 51, maybe even 52. This man's eternal. Ramsey ends up getting second at 93,000. Spitzer, who obviously won a couple MVPs in the Super Bowl, gets 87,000. Simpson, who was Josh Allen's successor, apparently was significantly better than him. It goes for 87K as well. Patrick Mahomes, though, 85K, which would be what Tom Brady has present day. Trevor Lawrence at 83K, finishing out his career with the Dolphins. So he went Jaguars, I believe Cowboys, and then Dolphins in this one. Fisher, who saw was a great quarterback for the Seahawks, is up there. Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees are really the only other guys that were pre-sim that are still on here. Passing touchdowns, no one is surprised that Tom Brady led this as well. 814, destroying what everybody has. I mean, if you play until you're 50 wearing Tom Brady's sleepwear, I guess you're going to win everything at this point. Ramsey with 700, as well as Spitzer. We see Fisher up there as well. Mahomes goes for 681. Trevor Lawrence is 654. Rodgers 648. Curry, who we saw again win multiple league MVPs and a Super Bowl, goes for 640 over his career. I mean, there was a lot of big talent that came out. Rushing yards, I'm not surprised that Derrick Henry is the leader here. 19,036. He had obviously a couple of incredible seasons, including a 2,200-yard year. McCaffrey up there as well. Apparently his injury history finally got past him with 18,600. Emmitt Smith obviously moving down to third now. Nick Chubb nearly getting to that record. Josh Jacobs getting up there. Did not expect that at all. Jonathan Taylor, kind of can see that considering how good he's been. He stayed with the Colts his entire career, as did Jacobs with the Raiders and Nick Chubb with the Browns as well. I think that's important to point out. Zeke stays with the Cowboys his entire time. James Robinson was with the Jags. So looks like running backs didn't really move much. Rushing touchdowns, Jacobs ends up with 209. So he beat out so many guys and he got 200. The first running back to whoever eclipsed that mark. Nick Chubb with 193. James Robinson with 189. Pryor, one of the generated running backs, was in at 187. Mixon at 176. I mean, even McCaffrey, who had a great year, had 168. And then you see Derrick Henry, who you would imagine would get the bulk of those touchdowns. But I guess Ryan Tannehill threw for 8 passing touchdowns in the game, so who knows? Only gets 163. Receiving yards, Jerry Rice obviously still has a record that cannot be touched because the dude played for 6,000 years, basically Tom Brady, but in the receiving side. Bradford ends up going for 19,550 in London. Drake London goes for 18,915. That's pretty cool. If you go to the receiving touchdowns, Bradford goes for 220. I mean, he shattered with Jerry Rice out, which I thought was pretty much untouchable. Drake London also killed it with the Falcons. I think Curry being a quarterback obviously helps him out from having a really good QB there, but he had a fantastic career as well. And then the guy we also saw a lot was Manny Sanchez, who won Offensive Player of the Year, I think 3 years in a row at one point, goes for 159 in his career. From a catches perspective, nobody's better than Kyle Pitts. Look at what he did. 1,599 catches, beating out what Jerry Rice has. Not only did he have an insane amount of catches, we're talking about a tight end. We're not talking about a receiver. We're talking about a tight end killing what Tony Gonzalez had previously at the tight end mark. This is mind-blowing to me. Kyle Pitts really became one of the greatest weapons we've ever seen in football. Defensive sacks, I am not surprised at all by Chase Young getting 224, beating out Myles Garrett. I mean, this dude was winning Defensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl MVP. He was making a name for himself. And while he doesn't have the single game record, he definitely beats out Myles Garrett in his career. And the defensive interceptions, we're not really seeing much action here. You're pretty much just seeing the older names that are on this list because, again, the quarterbacks were thriving, the cornerbacks, not so much. We're going to touch on the remaining Super Bowls and look at the legacy board to see ultimately who were the highest rated players of all time. And there's a shocker there. I'm going to just tease you with that. And if you're enjoying this video as well, leave a little thumbs up, subscribe. We got plenty more Madden 23 content coming early. So in 2043, the Rams get back to the Super Bowl. They end up beating the Jets at this point. Nathan Sandler, now the QB of the Rams, ends up getting the MVP of the Super Bowl. Joe Jacobs for the Cardinals wins league MVP again. Nick Sirianni still out here coaching. We see Anthony Anderson win Offensive Player of the Year, and Eldon Coleman, another defensive tackle, win Defensive Player of the Year. In 2044, the Raiders end up beating the Bucs pretty handily. Ronnie Harper getting the MVP for the Raiders at this point. George Sharp is now the NFL MVP. Sirianni wins Coach of the Year again. Deacon Caldwell and Eldon Coleman win Players of the Year on their side of the ball. In 2045, the Bucs now getting back here, end up beating the Colts. Quinn Cousins, the corner for the Bucs, ends up getting the MVP of the Super Bowl. Zach Callaway back as the MVP for the Titans. We see Peter Lindsay, Offensive Player of the Year, and Greg Bullough, who comes back as Defensive Player of the Year. In 2046, the Titans win 35-28 against the Minnesota Vikings. We've seen both of these teams kind of in the Super Bowl, I'd say a pretty decent amount. Zach Callaway, though, MVP of the league last year, gets Super Bowl MVP this time. Brendan Trent comes back as league MVP for the Seahawks. Kevin Stefanski's coaching the Jets now. Howie McKinley wins, as well as Quinn Cousins for Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year. In 2047, the Cowboys finally win another Super Bowl. You finally have one to celebrate, Cowboys fans. They beat the Bills. Kendrick Crowder ends up being the Super Bowl MVP, which again, a defensive tackle. We've seen a lot of those actually win MVP or Player of the Year on their side of the ball. The MVP of the league was Trent Peterson. You see Peter Mackey and Robert Purnwell win for Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year. In 2048, the Vikings again back in the mix, but they lose to the Bengals this time. Charlie Walsh, now the quarterback for the Bengals, wins MVP of the Super Bowl. Ronnie Harper gets the league MVP. Antoine Dixon and Taylor Lucas both get Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year, and Dana Clawson is now the Coach of the Year for the Cardinals. In 2049, the Rams back in the mix, beat the Raiders in a shootout. Probably would have been an incredible Super Bowl to be a part of, but they end up seeing Trent Peterson win the MVP for the Super Bowl. Eric Douglas for the Titans wins MVP of the league. The Titans have actually had a really good couple of quarterbacks that have won MVP or some sort of award. We see Eric Douglas also win Offensive Player of the Year, and Kevin McLeod get Defensive Player of the Year. And actually, Eric Douglas is a rookie, so he wins MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and he wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, the Titans really got one. And then in 2050, we see the Rams beat out the Jets again. Trent Peterson coming back as MVP. We see Ronnie Harper win MVP of the league. Stefanski back for Coach of the Year for the Jets, but they couldn't get over the hump. JaMychal Young comes in as the best receiver. And then Dom Street comes in as Defensive Player of the Year. Now, when we look at the legacy leaderboard for all time, this is crazy. So Curry, who I think it was Earl Curry who came in the league, was one of the most dominant quarterbacks we've ever seen. He has a great career, but he actually gets ranked the #1 quarterback of all time. He has 1 Super Bowl, 3 conference championships, and 19 yearly awards. When you compare that to Spitzer, you see a Super Bowl, 2 championships, 15 yearly awards, kind of makes sense. Fisher, 1 Super Bowl, 2 conference championships, 10 awards. Joe Burrow has 2 Super Bowls, 2 conference championships, 13 awards. Mahomes, again, a great career. Ramsey, Lawrence, but you're noticing there's one name we haven't really talked about as we get down here. You see Lamar, Tom Brady, 7 Super Bowls, 10 championships, 20 yearly awards, and he's ranked 9th all time. So you're telling me 8 quarterbacks are better than Tom Brady? With that fewer Super, that's a tough sort of pill to swallow. Maybe EA's not really counting in how many Super Bowls Tom Brady won sort of prior, only what he essentially did at one point when he came in. But I feel like Tom Brady should at least been up there at number 2, if nothing else. Christian McCaffrey goes down as the greatest running back of all time with 36,000 legacy, never won a Super Bowl, never won a conference championship, got 20 yearly awards. Nick Chubb never won a Super Bowl. We see Derrick Henry obviously get that 1 Super Bowl there for him and 8 yearly awards. Jacobs never won one, but he had an insane amount of rushing yards. We see Joe Mixon obviously winning one. Zeke never won one, so apparently he wasn't with the Cowboys. We thought he was there his whole career, but he wasn't with the Cowboys when they ultimately won. Pryor, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, there's some big names out here that never really won. The greatest fullback of all time, for anybody who cares, is P. Elam. We go to wide receiver. Bradford, I'm not really surprised. Again, this dude had 220 receiving touchdowns over his career, won 3 Super Bowls, 4 conference championships, 18 yearly awards. Definitely deserves it. We see Sanchez up there pretty well. Never won a Super Bowl or championship, but he ends up getting 14 yearly awards. Brooks wins one. Drake London got a Super Bowl, obviously, with the Falcons, 3 conference championships, and 11 yearly awards. You go to tight end. There's no question it's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was with 46,000 legacy, a Super Bowl, 3 conference championships, 11 yearly awards. I want to see where he actually ranks all time. So he was at 46,000. So Kyle Pitts was 10th all time for all-time player rankings. That's huge. I mean, arguably the greatest tight end of all time. So if you look at every position though, Tyron Smith ends up getting greatest left tackle. You see your best left guard goes to Quentin Nelson. Center goes to Coleman, a creative player that sort of comes through here. You see Zach Martin win your best right guard of all time. Your best right tackle goes to G. Walters of the Titans again. That was a massive. The teams they were putting out for the Titans were kind of insane the entire time. Might have been one of the best teams we had seen throughout this entire simulation. Best left end of all time. No one's surprised with this. Chase Young. If you go to your best defensive tackle, there's a lot of these guys that obviously did well, but E. Coleman only 4,000 legacy behind what we saw from Kyle Pitts, for example. He ends up getting 23 yearly awards. Never won the big game, but gets into the Hall of Fame. You go to right end, you see Myles Garrett. That guy was actually rated higher than Myles Garrett. He ends up surpassing what Aaron Donald had for his career, despite never winning a championship. You go to left outside linebacker, TJ Watt, go Steelers. You go to middle linebacker, you see W. Gordon with C. Henry behind him. You go to right outside linebacker, you're seeing Josh Allen, the defensive player, obviously winning that one with Khalil Mack being behind him. At corner, you see A. Herring coming down, as well as Gaddis and Tre'Davious White as the greatest corners of all time. Tre'Davious White winning 2 Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills at that point. Best free safety of all time, go Steelers, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then your best strong safety of all time goes to M. Pollard with Bonds, Palmer, Jones, and Matthew being there at 5th. And then your best kicker, I mean, literally no one's going to ever surpass Justin Tucker, the greatest kicker of all time. If you want to argue that in the comments, I'll fight you. And then your best punter of all time goes to T. Barrington. And I don't really know if we have a real punter like on this list. Nowhere close. And then your greatest head coach of all time goes to A. Smith. He won 1 Super Bowl, 3 championships, 7 yearly awards. Andy Reid ends up getting 2 Super Bowls. We see Staley get 1. A lot of these guys ultimately won 1. Not a lot of coaches really stuck around for 2 Super Bowls or more, but it is what it is at that point. So there you have it. The year 2051, 30 years, technically 29, but we're seeing 30 years of Madden NFL 23 franchise mode. What do you ultimately think? I think it was crazy. If you want to see more crazy experiments like this, do a little thumbs up on the video. Subscribe if you haven't, and be safe, be smart. Tell somebody you love them. Catch you guys on the next one.